In the live service on Sunday, I'm going to be taking a short survey of the congregation about holidays. So if you're watching this online or if you're reading this in the sermon notes, then obviously I'm not going to be able to hear your answers. But I would like you to take a couple of minutes and simply think about this question. In your opinion, what is the biggest holiday on the calendar? And why do you think that? Now, think about that through the lens of the Bible. Does that change your answer at all? It does change it for me. When I think about the calendar and our culture, I think that we celebrate Christmas as the biggest holiday in the year. Often we have a few days off, we have 2 weeks off from school, and there's tons of traditions around Christmas that I absolutely love. We have lights shining out in the darkness on our houses in the darkest period of the year in Canada. We have a tree and special decorations set up all around the place, and we have gifts that hide their secrets for 2 or 3 weeks before they're revealed with joy and laughter on Christmas morning. It's also got television specials and family gatherings, turkey dinner with cranberry sauce, which is still properly in the shape of the can if it's a real tradition. And then the gifts are all packed up, and the wrapping paper is recycled, and wham, it's the new year. Traditionally, though, the center of the Christian calendar is not Christmas. It's Easter. So true, without Christmas, there would be no Easter, and I'm not going to get into the debate of which came first, the Santa Claus or the bunny. Easter is the celebration, though, that reminds us about the fulcrum, the focus point or the pivot point of all of creation. That is Jesus Christ, his death on the cross, and his resurrection from the dead. Easter also does something else that's very important for us as Christians. It ties us to the most important event on the Jewish calendar as well. And it shows us that our story is inseparable from the Jewish story of the Old Testament. I'm talking about the Passover. The Passover, just like our Christmas, has lots of meaningful traditions. A whole family would eat a meal together, including a lamb that was freshly sacrificed at the temple. They would eat it at night with several special sauces and side dishes, and finish the night singing songs called the Hallel, or Psalms 113 to 118 in our modern Bibles. All of these things were done specifically to teach and to remind the people. Look at what Exodus 12:26 says. And when your children ask you, what does this ceremony mean to you? Then tell them, it's the Passover sacrifice to the Lord, who passed over the houses of the Israelites in Egypt and spared our homes when he struck down the Egyptians. The Passover is a cultural tradition that has been observed for thousands of years. There's no way to fully come to an understanding of it in one sermon. However, I do want to highlight a couple of thoughts for us today. What is it exactly that the Israelites were supposed to remind their children of? I think that they're being reminded of the key points of their story. First, this is an anchor to generations that follow of their origins and their identity. In the Passover ritual, recited every year, every Jew confesses that he or she is a slave in Egypt and was redeemed through God's mighty deeds. This is not a symbol or an empty repetition. It's a personal identification with the story of a people, the defining moment in their history when they became, at a very basic level, who they are. It acknowledges the community basis for how the individuals become who they are. Secondly, it reminds them of their rescue. God reaching in with his mighty arm through the oppression, the chaos, the disaster, and pulling a group of slaves out of their prison, setting them free. There's absolutely no way that the people could have done that for themselves. After all, they'd been there for 400 years. You would think that in that time somebody would have tried. But one didn't simply run away from Egypt. They were the superpower of their day. The Exodus is a story of God's battling it out. And in the end, one was left with his army drowned his power broken, and his hold on enslaved people destroyed forever. The other, the true God of the Israelites, leads a victory procession into the wilderness. And finally, it reminds the people that they are in ministry, that they're on a mission. God doesn't just save the Israelites and then lead them out into the wilderness and pat them on the bottom and tell them to make good of their opportunity, so they should probably run. He saved them to do something specific. He saved them to become the people of God, those who would not only inherit the land, but also the gift of the covenant. God would be their God, and they would be his people. So why are we focusing on this today? Because this is the foundation of a ritual that we participate every month in our denomination. When we take communion, we remember and celebrate our own participation in the Lord's table as though we were physically present and therefore also at the foot of the cross and again at the empty tomb. We physically tear the bread with our hands and we pour out the wine, the very acts of violence against the body of Jesus, the one who comes to rescue us from our impossible dilemma and inevitable destruction. And finally, most importantly, we are prepared, set apart. The $10 theological word for that is sanctified. But I wouldn't worry too much about that, as much as I would worry about understanding that we are set apart for the mission of God. We are tied in with the people of God from around the world, each of whom eat the same bread and drink the same cup. Friends, there are not many churches. There's only the church. There are not many different people of God. There are the people of God. And we are those people of God. It's so much more than just Welch's and Wonder Bread for us. It's the very specific action of the redeemed people of God preparing to go into the wilderness and become the moving hand of God in creation. Friends, that is absolutely incredible, that we are the moving hand of God in our relationships, that we bring healing and encouraging, helping and giving. It's who we have been, it's who we are, and it's who we will be. Most importantly, right now, in a divided and angry, social media shallow world of relating, that the church is desperately needed to step in and be that rooted, anchored sense of reality for people who do not yet know or understand what the true Christian story is. I don't have any really specific application for today's message. I guess if you really need one, it would be read the Bible and do what it says. However, I do have specific encouragement for you, and that is this. When you are doing the work of God, when you are following Jesus as a believer, you are not alone. Just let that sink in for a minute or two. Friends, you are not alone. There are others who have been called and who have done this work before you, who do it with you, and who will do it after you, because God has tied you into his great story across time and across space. Now, in the era of a global pandemic, it would be unwise for us to share communion physically. But online, we have a very special communion service available, and I'm quite excited about it. As a reminder that we're not alone, our sister church, the Iglesia de Dios in Reveleta de Cuba, is sharing their communion service with us. It's in Spanish, but we've subtitled the video for you. Today, as you watch, remember the unity that this meal celebrates. You're anchored in a story that is thousands of years in the making, personally, physically, and intentionally. You have been saved from the impossible dilemma of slavery to sin and death. And together, we are called, equipped, and sent to be the people of God, the hand of God, to do good in our world. Amen.